So we're going to start off with the light reaction. Before we can actually get into the process of the way the light reactions work, we need to back up and talk a little physics. So in order for sunlight to work, or in order for photosynthesis to work, I should say, we need sunlight. Now, sunlight comes in to our atmosphere, to Earth, in the form of electromagnetic energy. So that electromagnetic energy travels in these waves, right? So for every wavelength, I go from peak to peak or crest to crest. That tells me something about that wave. It tells me how much energy is associated with it. The closer together those waves come, the more energy that's associated with them, but they will tend to burn out more quickly. The bigger the wavelength, right, the more distance between crest to crest or peak to peak, the longer that energy, the less energy, I should say, that it has, but it'll tend to dissipate over bigger portions of time. When we look at the sunlight in terms of where it comes in on that electromagnetic spectrum, it dips a little bit into the UV part of the spectrum, so that's kind of why we need our sunscreen, right? Goes all the way through all of those visible colors that we see in the rainbow, and also dips into then the upper end of the electromagnetic spectrum into the infrared, which you guys detect as heat. So here's the thing, when we look at sunlight in terms of photosynthesis, we're not going to be able to utilize all the energy that works across that entire spectrum that the sunlight's coming in. So what do we end up using? Well, when we look at your chloroplasts, right, they contain pigments. And by definition, a pigment in general is any chemical compound that ultimately determines a substance's color. So when we take a look at white light, right, white light coming from the sun or white light coming from a light bulb, all of that white light contains every color of the rainbow. And so when that light shines on a particular material that contains a pigment, that light has three options in terms of the colors and energy that it has associated with them. That pigment can either absorb that light, it can transmit it, which means it passes it straight through the material, or it can reflect it, which means it bounces it back to your eye. So when we look at something like sunlight, that sunlight comes in, it contains all the colors of the rainbow. Some of that sunlight's going to get absorbed. Some of the energy and some of the colors that are associated with that energy will get absorbed by the pigment in your plants. Some of it's going to get transmitted and some of it's going to get reflected. So chlorophyll is the pigment that gives your chloroplasts or your plants its green color. And there's a reason that it's green. So chlorophyll is able to absorb on both ends of the color spectrum, so that blue and violet range, as well as the red and orange. So those two color ranges and the energy that are associated with those colors are capable of being utilized by your plant, by the pigment. That's the colors that get absorbed. And anything that gets absorbed is stuff that you don't see. Now, chlorophyll can't use the middle range, sort of that green and even into the yellow range of the spectrum, and so it's not going to absorb those wavelengths, it's not going to hold on to them, it's not going to keep that because it can't use it. So instead, those wavelengths get transmitted through the leaf as well as get reflected back off the plant and back to your eye. So that energy then is getting detected by your eyes and all the cells in your eyes whose job it is to detect different colors and send that information to your brain so your brain interprets it. So because it's those green wavelengths that get bounced back, that's why those plants look green to you. Now, if you look at some other pigment, let's just say somebody has on a red shirt. Well, it's the red pigment now that's getting reflected back to your eye, and it's absorbing all the other colors. If you look at something that's white, well, it's reflecting all the colors, which is why white is a good color to wear in the summertime, because you don't want to absorb all of that energy. that energy also brings with it heat. So you want to reflect as much energy and as much light as you can. Flip side, if you wanted to stay warm in the wintertime, black's a great color because black absorbs all of it. So hopefully that makes sense in terms of why you see different colors based on what gets absorbed, what gets transmitted, what gets reflected. In the case of photosynthesis, we're looking at the chlorophyll. The chlorophyll's job is to absorb the blue and violet and the red and orange wavelengths. That's the energy that your plants can actually utilize to drive photosynthesis, make that ATP, make that NADPH, and then ultimately convert that into sugars. Now, there are other pigments that exist in plants. Not every plant just contains chlorophyll. In fact, there are actually two different versions of chlorophyll that you can see there in that graph. You've got your chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. But when you look at where these guys are actually absorbing in the wavelengths, so the peaks are the absorption, and these are your colors, here's where that blue and purple comes in, here's where that red and orange comes in. Now, a lot of our plants also contain another set of pigments called carotenoids. They're sort of accessory pigments, and their job is to help broaden the spectrum of light that can actually get used for photosynthesis, so taking in just a little bit of extra energy. And it also helps to protect the chlorophyll from damage from having to absorb all the energy itself. And if I look at those carotenoids in this graph, those carotenoids absorb all the way into the purple and then down into the blue, nothing down here in the green, and oh, by the way, nothing all the way down here in the red and orange range either. So guess when you can see the carotenoids during the year? Well, here in the US where we live, we're talking deciduous trees that lose their leaves in the fall. Well, what happens to them come the fall? That chlorophyll ends up actually breaking down first. So it breaks down, it leaves the leaves, you don't see it anymore. And just for a little bit longer in the fall, we end up just seeing the carotenoids. Well, what are all your leaf colors in the fall? Oranges and yellows and reds. Oh, which if you look at that graph, is where those carotenoids are not capable of absorbing. And so we end up seeing those colors once the chlorophyll disappears in the fall.